There was a time when I apologized for everything. I'd walk into a room late and say, "Sorry." I'd offer an idea, and if someone frowned, I'd rush to soften it with a nervous laugh and a quick, "Oh, sorry, just a thought." Even when others had wronged me, I'd find a way to blame myself. Now, maybe no one ever told you this, but there's a hidden cost to living like that. When we apologize to escape discomfort, we're not being humble. We're not being kind. We're surrendering a sacred part of ourselves, the voice that was meant to stand, to speak, to lead. Maybe you've done it too. You feel tension rising in a room, and instead of letting the silence teach, you fill it with a smile and a soft, "Sorry if I made anyone uncomfortable." But let me ask you something from the heart. When did you learn that your discomfort was dangerous? That your truth needed to be wrapped in an apology before anyone could receive it? You see, most of us weren't taught how to sit with discomfort. We were taught how to avoid conflict, how to please, how to make ourselves small so others wouldn't feel threatened. But what if I told you that growth and leadership don't live in comfort? They live in clarity. And clarity often demands courage, the kind that doesn't say sorry for showing up whole. There's a reason why some of the most admired leaders in history weren't the loudest in the room. They were the clearest. They spoke with conviction, not because they had all the answers, but because they had learned not to fear their own presence. So let me say this softly but firmly. Every time you apologize just to smooth the edges of your truth, you send a message to your own soul that your voice isn't safe. You plant doubt in others. Doubt that you know what you're doing, that your ideas have weight, that your leadership can be trusted. Apologizing out of compassion is noble, but apologizing out of fear is self-erasure. I know you've walked through things. I know you've been hurt, silenced, dismissed. But that doesn't mean you owe the world your silence now. It means you've earned the right to speak with grace and without apology. There's a quote I often return to. "Let your words be few, but let them be full." That's the goal. Not to say more, but to say what matters, with peace. There's a reason why this kind of self-erasing becomes so common. It's subtle. It sneaks in. Most people won't notice it on the outside, but inside, it feels like you're always negotiating your worth. And it begins early. Maybe in a family where love felt conditional. Maybe in a relationship where disagreement turned into danger. Maybe in a job where being nice was rewarded more than being honest. So you learned to cushion your opinions, to bend your truth, to speak with disclaimers and retreat behind a soft "I'm sorry" when your strength made others uncomfortable. But friend, real strength doesn't apologize for existing. Real strength listens deeply, speaks gently, and stands firm. It doesn't raise its voice to be heard. It simply refuses to whisper what was meant to be spoken boldly. Think of a mountain. It doesn't explain itself. It doesn't shift because the wind grows loud. It simply is, rooted, ancient, and present. That's the kind of inner authority you were born with, but pain taught you to doubt it. Somewhere along the way, we started believing that peace meant keeping the waters still, that kindness meant avoiding all friction, that leadership meant being liked, even when being liked meant being less than true. But let me offer you a deeper vision. Peace isn't the absence of conflict, it's the presence of truth, held without fear. Kindness isn't agreeing with everything, it's speaking with honor, even when you disagree. Leadership isn't about making everyone comfortable, it's about holding steady when the room trembles. You don't owe anyone a version of yourself that shrinks to fit their comfort. And here's what's astonishing. When you stop apologizing for your essence, you give others permission to stop apologizing for theirs too. Your authenticity becomes a lighthouse, quiet, unshakable, and deeply needed in a world filled with noise. So, how do we begin reclaiming this voice that's been diluted by decades of unnecessary apologies? We begin with small acts of emotional discipline. Next time you're about to say, "Sorry, but," pause. Ask yourself, am I apologizing for kindness? Or am I apologizing for clarity? If it's clarity, hold your words. Let them land. Let them breathe. This doesn't mean becoming cold or dismissive. It means becoming whole. It means trusting that the truth, spoken with respect, is always enough. There's a deep peace that comes when you stop managing everyone else's emotions and start being responsible only for your own. Let that be your prayer today. God, grant me the serenity to stand in truth without shrinking, the courage to speak with grace, and the wisdom to know when silence speaks louder than sorry. Let me share something I've learned, not from theory, but from walking with real people through real battles. There's a sacred moment that happens in every life, when a person decides they are done apologizing for being whole. It doesn't happen loudly. It rarely happens with fanfare. It begins quietly, in the pause before a habitual sorry that never comes. That pause is the beginning of healing. Because every time you withhold an unnecessary apology, you tell yourself, I matter too. My clarity is not cruelty. My presence is not a problem. And maybe no one ever said this to you before, but you are allowed to be firm without being harsh. You are allowed to take up space without guilt. You are allowed to walk into a room and speak as though you belong, because you do. Now let me be clear. I'm not talking about arrogance. I'm not talking about bulldozing others or becoming emotionally numb. I'm talking about a sacred middle path, a grounded confidence that doesn't need to over-explain, over-apologize, or overcompensate. I remember a woman who came to one of my workshops many years ago. She was bright, thoughtful, gentle, but she began every sentence with, "Sorry. Sorry, this might be dumb, but sorry if I'm taking up too much time." She had grown so used to apologizing that she couldn't speak without shrinking. One day, after sharing a deeply moving reflection, someone in the group turned to her and said, "Please don't ever apologize for your soul again." And something broke open in her. She wept, not from weakness, but from release. from the years she had silenced herself in the name of harmony, from the times she had twisted herself into softness just to be seen as safe. Maybe that's you. Maybe you've mastered the art of being agreeable, but you've lost touch with your own direction. Maybe you've been so busy managing how others feel that you've forgotten what you truly believe. If so, I want to invite you, gently but clearly, to come home to your voice. Not the voice shaped by fear, not the voice trained to please, but the voice that still whispers when you're alone. You know who you are. Leadership, at its core, is not about authority. It's about presence. And presence is only powerful when it's rooted in truth. The world doesn't need more performers. It needs more people at peace with themselves. People who speak slowly, clearly, and without apology for being whole. That's what you're becoming now. Not perfect, but whole. Not forceful, but free. So, what do we do now? We walk forward, not with fists clenched, but with shoulders relaxed. Not with a heart full of defense, but with a spirit full of resolve. This path you're on, it's not just about communication. It's about identity. It's about becoming someone who no longer needs to explain their every breath. There's a verse that says, "Let your yes be yes, and your no be no." Simple, direct, undeniably powerful. And yet, how many of us feel the need to soften our no until it becomes a maybe? How often do we decorate our yes with uncertainty, just to keep others from misunderstanding? But peace, true peace, doesn't come from avoiding being misunderstood. It comes from being internally understood. By you, by your soul, by the God who made you. That's what changes everything. You don't need a crowd to validate your clarity. You don't need applause to confirm your direction. You just need quiet courage, one sacred moment at a time. So tomorrow morning, when you rise, let that be your first breath. I will not apologize for the light within me. And then, throughout the day, pay attention to the small moments. When you instinctively begin to say, "Sorry, but," pause, breathe. Replace that with a deeper statement. "Thank you for listening." Or simply, "Here's what I think." Let that be your practice. Not a performance, not a script, but a habit of integrity. Because your leadership isn't found in how often you keep everyone happy. It's found in how gently and firmly you live in alignment with your truth. Even Jesus, the most compassionate soul to walk this earth, didn't apologize for offending those who clung to comfort. He spoke with tenderness, but never with timidity. He healed, but never begged for approval. And in his silence, as much as in his speech, there was authority. That is what I hope for you. Not that you become louder, but that you become clearer. Not that you erase your empathy, but that you no longer sacrifice your truth upon its altar. You are not too sensitive. You are not too bold. You are simply remembering how to be whole. From this day forward, walk with dignity, speak with peace, and know that your presence, unapologetic, grounded, loving, is the medicine this world so desperately needs. Because when one person stops apologizing for their truth, they invite 1,000 others to do the same. You don't need to be perfect. You just need to begin. And you already have.